The area of law we're going to be talking about first this morning, it takes, I really think it takes a person who's got a really big heart and really, really cares about people. I'm not saying others don't. I'm just saying this one area of law, in order to practice in this area, you really need to care about people. And we have one of the finest attorneys in the state of Florida. We are so blessed to have attorney Debbie Baker. Good morning, attorney.
Good, good morning, host. Okay, let's see.
that, that
Okay,
was a
let's see.
good one.
Okay, all right, well, okay.
But really, you know what? With what you do, and you have got the most incredible story, and we get new people all the time. Tell people how you got to where you are right now.
Oh my gosh. Well, since we
Yeah,
started off, since we started off flippant, I could I
when you were
walked
2 years old.
I could walk. I could say I walked 10 feet and sat in the chair. From here. Um,
No,
well,
but
let's see.
you didn't start off uh,
No.
as an
Attorney is
attorney.
no. I didn't start off as an attorney. Didn't go to law school when I was 22 or 23 or 24. Went a lot later in life. Thought about it when I was younger, not 23, but in my late 20s, and never, I had great excuses. The first time I think was really a reason. I couldn't imagine finding the money because I got accepted so close to when school started. But the next two were I wasn't going to take required courses because I was too old to do that. They should know better than ask somebody over the age of 30 to take contracts and torts. It's just so arrogant. And then the third time, I didn't find a part-time school in Florida, which who knows what kept me from doing that. And I wasn't going to be licensed in California since I wasn't moving. Uh, and I've always been driven to be of service. So the fourth time was just a time when I'd had a I had a coaching practice, an executive coaching practice, life coaching practice, call it whatever you will. And it would go, through mountains and valleys and stuff like that. And I became a woman of faith, well, just about 40 years ago. It's great, Steve, because I still keep practicing being 39. So anyway, in any event, and this time when I asked God, do I keep coaching or do I get a job? He told me to go to law school. And I was in New York recently visiting a friend and out on the island, and she said, "So you heard a voice?" Very snarky, which is the way I would have said it at some point. I said,
Right.
"Well, yes." I said, "Yeah, actually, I did. I did. I had some voice say go to law school." And and then I asked a follow-up question because I got panicked, which was when, and I heard get ready, and I didn't know what that meant. But um, on August 22nd of this year, it'll be 13 years since I started law school, which is truly amazing. It's a 4-year part-time program, 4 years, so 9 years since I graduated. And it was absolutely the right thing at the right time. Everybody listening has probably had something show up, whether you call it God or the universe or the fates or coincidence, whatever name you give it, shows up at just the right time when you need it or when you're looking for it. And law school was it. Um, and I loved it. I, I loved it. I love being in a classroom. I love the learning. It's great to be older and not be engaged in law review and all those other things that if I'd been younger, I probably would have been, wanted to do. And then I chose estate planning because I'm watching the cat consider walking across the keyboard. Okay. Um,
The star.
oh, the star, he knows, he hears it. I'm telling you, he have always been driven to be of service. Um, and so in this, it's a great place where I can make people's lives easier, whether they're doing estate planning to hope preclude having to have anything to do with a court after they pass, or probate because not enough has been done or nothing's been done to preclude court after somebody passes. And then it's just and to bring as much laughter at times, but just ease into a process by being on top of things and staying in communication and taking full responsibility for when it doesn't go. I don't keep my side of the bargain. I don't do things necessarily as efficiently as they might have been done or whatever. And having learned a long time ago that it's not about blame, and I can be 100% responsible for the fact that something worked or didn't work, and then you can move forward. It's easy to say, well, Steve had just answered my email. I would have been back in touch. Well, let's see. Did you reach out to Steve to ask? Oh no, I didn't do that. Okay. so, so, so it's yeah. So it's very it's endlessly exciting. There's always something new. Always something new. Yeah. So
Debbie,
that's
I gotta say something to you. First, one of the first things that really touched me with Debbie is our first email, and she wrote back to me and said, "Blessings." And I, as a believer, that was really meant something to me. And I'm not turning this show into a religious show, but you just said something just a minute ago, and the Lord's kind of tugging on my heart right now to say this, because I'll tell people, um, times I'll go, God has told me things. And the first thing they go is, "Oh, God talks to you." And I tell them, he's never like talk to me, but he always gives me signs. And then it's up to me to decide who who do I listen to? And I've learned over the years he is so much smarter than me. So when I don't, some people, I really do believe God has talked to them. In my case, it's just he gives me signs, and I find that when I follow those signs, I always do well. And sometimes being human, I don't 100%, and I found out he was always right. So I don't know why he was just tugging on my heart to say that, but I
you
know
know
you know.
I know what you mean. Well, to think and everybody listening or watching may have heard this story before, but it's one of my favorite stories just in general about and I was thinking that I hadn't thought of this image before, but this is a story about this terrible rainstorm. So Steve said there might be a hurricane coming his way in Florida. Terrible rainstorm. And the house starts to flood, and somebody comes along in a jeep, because the jeep can still get through, and says to him and Sophia, "Come on, I'll take you to safety." And he said, "No, no, no, we're waiting on the Lord." So the next thing you know, you're on the second floor, and the boat comes by, and you say, "No, no, no, we're waiting on the Lord." And then finally, you're on the roof, and the helicopter comes by, and you say, "No, no, no, we're waiting on the Lord." And when you get to heaven, you ask God, "What was he thinking?" And he said, "I sent you a jeep, I sent you a boat, I sent you a helicopter. Like, what more did you want?" It's just such a great story. And we can probably all have situations that are metaphorically that. And and for me, which I have, estate planning is the Jeep.
Yes.
It's the Jeep. And estate planning in a crisis, in a crisis is the boat. So you have a health crisis, and all of a sudden you say, "Oh my gosh, nothing's in order." So now you've got the boat, right? The helicopter, I'm not sure what the helicopter is, but the helicopter could be you get on, but now you're in probate because you didn't do it in time, and your family's going to wind up in court. And I spoke to somebody last week at a trade show whom I know, don't know well, and said, "Have you done your plan?" He said, "I don't have any assets yet." I said, "Well, you just bought a house, so you've got a house." "Well, yeah, but talk to me in 2 years when I've got money." And it's like, if I'd been if if I'd been a lot younger in terms of chronology when I became a lawyer, I would I would have felt the same way. Actually, I would have been a shoemaker with holes in their shoes and not done a plan because I was so young. Um, people people have such huge peace of mind once it's done, and they can't imagine it on this side of the fence. On this side of the fence, it looks like a lot of work and a lot of money. And when they get to the other side of the fence, they can say, "Oh, I can go on vacation now," or "I know if my wife and I go traveling, that this is all taken care of, and my children know where all the paperwork is." So it's essential. It's one of those things almost that should be taught in school. Finance should be taught in school, and the idea of planning for your future, not only for life insurance or home insurance, but what happens in if there's a tragedy and you're prepared that you have that ready. So I really like that estate planning when you're calm and you can do it is really just your Jeep. Just get it done.
And you've got to have a heart for this too. I think that's really important also, unlike any other area of law.
Well, I don't know. And thank you. I always appreciate being acknowledged for that. I mean, I don't have the heart to be a litigator. I have people who love the way I argue and told me you should go to court. And I went, no. Um, and I know people who just thrive on it. I mean, they just thrive on it. Doesn't mean they don't have hearts, but they love that. They love that fight, so to speak. Um, the estate planning probate demands the big heart because you've got people who are in crisis who now are have to do all this work that could have been avoided. And it also helps. Again, part of not being 26 when I graduated is I have so much appreciation for the people who work in the courts, for the
Mm.
jobs that they do, and the crazy people they have to deal with, like me, if if an attorney calls them upset and angry, like it's so last week is a true story. Got a probate going on, didn't get information from the court, didn't get information from the court, finally called the court, spoke to the woman who's managing the case. She said, we sent you information. We sent you an email asking for more information on June 26th. Then we sent you another one on July 16th. And I said, I believe you. I never got it. Never got it. Never got it. Well, it somehow my technology put it into spam. My tech, who knows? I have no idea. And there was a time I would have been so angry at everybody, as if it was everybody's fault. It had been intentional. And I probably wouldn't have believed the woman at the court. Yeah, you're just saying that, right? And 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 I checked every email and I never got it. But the point was once I could get over the disappointment, it was like, okay, so now what do I do? And for me, part of the process of bringing my best self to the table is yes, that happened, and now what do we do? Not yes, that happened, and who do we blame? Yes, that happened, and now what do we do? So in probate, same idea, same idea. What? Yes, that happened. Now what do we do? And people do appreciate that. They do appreciate that. I don't. I've learned not to get caught up in their drama, which is sometimes hard, and to just work to keep things calm so we can move forward.
But you work at keeping people out of probate because
Well,
probate
that's
can
the
be
idea. Yeah.
very
This,
expensive.
yes. So yes, I told somebody recently. I said, so if you do this, you'll spend X dollars, and if you don't do this, and something happens to you, your estate will pay like a 20 times X to probate it. And they went, what? I said,
Yeah.
and that's just the law. That's not even whether somebody's gouging you, or that's at least what's allowable. So the idea of the estate planning is to put all the things. Too many people say, I left my children in my house and my will because they don't know that that won't get them the house easily. It'll get them the house eventually. So anybody listening or watching has a will and it says, uh, this house goes to Joe and Susan upon my death. That's great. However, Joe and Susan will have to go to court to get the right to own the house so that they can do whatever they want. If some other form of planning had been done, and I'm sure every state has something that can preclude that, then upon the death, the house would have belonged to Joe and Susan. There is no reason in the world for anybody to know that. None. None, because it makes perfect sense. I said, you and Sophia write in my will that if Sophia's cats are still living when we pass, the house belongs to them, and my brother will live in the house and care for them until they die. Whatever it is, right? But
Yeah.
right? But if you don't have that, that won't get them the house. That won't get your brother the house. That won't even get the cats the house. But the the without something bigger than that, without speaking to an attorney so they can say, well, we can do that, and you might really want to consider doing this. Um, there's no reason for people to know. So people call, and people should only have to grieve when somebody dies. So estate planning done correctly and kept up with will leave your family in a position with when you pass. The only thing that your family needs to do is grieve, and maybe call the attorney in 6 months to see now is everything in line. So yeah,
Debbie, do you get many calls, people asking you about medical power of attorney?
yeah.
And what is that? What is
Oh,
medical power of attorney?
well, in some states, actually, it's called a medical power of attorney, and in Hillsborough, in Florida, it's called a healthcare surrogate. So a healthcare surrogate is a document where somebody appoints a person to to be able to be in communication with their doctors and to make medical decisions for them if the need comes, and only medical decisions, not financial decisions. So by having a power of attorney, so when you had your cataract surgery, Steve, both times, unless you had a separate document wherever you had that surgery, they had you fill out their healthcare surrogate and living will,
Yes.
right? Okay.
Yes.
The challenge, and a lot of people have that, like it's on file with Tampa General here in Tampa, let's say. The challenge with that is if that person doesn't have that other document and they wind up where they're in a hospital that doesn't have the document, and they're taken in emergency by ambulance and there's nothing that's known, there's really nobody to even notify about. So something happened, and we need, who do you name your healthcare surrogate or your medical power of attorney? So it's a document that you can have, that you give to all your doctors, all your healthcare providers, and bring with you when you know you're going to a hospital. And you probably, people put a card in their wallet that said, well, in case of emergency, notify so and so and so and so, that kind of idea. But that's a medical power of attorney. And the thing gets confused sometimes. It's the living will, which is end of life. So you've been determined to have no reasonable medical probability of recovery. I love that expression. By your doctor and a consulting doctor in a terminal condition, an end stage condition, terminal being, we'll say, stage 4 cancer, end stage being kidney failure, persistent vegetative state is where you really don't have any brain activity. And you've told the doctor and given somebody permission to pull the plug or not pull the plug. That's a very personal decision. People will call me oftentimes and say, I need a living will, because they think that document, which is about health, is a last will, which will say how they want their estate to be handled. There's a lot of confusion about that. And that I get a lot of phone calls about that. I need a living will. Are you sure? Well, I need a will that says my daughter gets my house. I said, that's not a living will. But the medical power of attorney or the healthcare surrogate is just for that specific purpose. I always recommend it go into effect right away. And I always recommend that decision-making powers go into effect right away, because the document says, as long as I have capacity, I can override anything my surrogate says. I just know of situations where people haven't given that power, and then they're stuck. They're stuck. So does that answer the question, sort of, kind of?
Yes. Um, I don't know if I should apologize. I have so many questions for you today, and I kind of got off topic. I think it was important. Uh, give everybody, how do they reach you? How do they set up an appointment with you? And do you have a website?
I do. For those of you watching, is the website across the screen? No, but the phone number is. So the website is London, like the city, londonbakerlaw.com. Uh, my email is Deb Baker, so two B's in the middle, Deb Baker at londonbakerlaw.com. The phone number is 813-586-1332, 813-586-1332. Um, you know, wherever you are, you may be in Florida, you may not. I am happy to talk to anybody. I can counsel you about Florida law, but I can also help have you give you questions to ask an attorney in whatever state you're in, because documents aren't always the same, execution requirements aren't always the same, and I can give you directions on at least what to ask and what to look for. Um, Please, just delighted to help.
And sometimes a second opinion is definitely worthwhile. So you might contact Debbie if you've got if you want just a second opinion.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Not a bad idea, oftentimes, to get us just a second look at things. Absolutely.
We're blessed to have Debbie with us every month. Debbie will be back. She's always with us the last Monday of the month at 9 a.m. So it's easy to find her show. Debbie, thank you so much. We can just touch one person each show, right?
But that would be nice. That would be really nice. It's certainly a goal. Anyway, you have a
Thank
great one. And Rebel,
you.
thanks a lot.